Imagine the absolute most powerful god in the universe, right?
Right.
Like a being who can shatter mountains, summon literal storms of fire, and just tear the sky open with their bare hands.
Yeah, the kind of invincible warrior that usually dominates these ancient epics.
Exactly. But now, imagine that same untouchable warrior being slowly, just unavoidably killed. And not by, a massive magical nuke or in some epic clash of armies.
Right, which is what you'd expect.
Yeah, but instead it's by a solitary man sitting in a totally quiet room hundreds of miles away, simply bowing to a straw doll for 21 days.
It is such a chilling image, honestly.
It really is. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking you into a universe where the absolute most dangerous person in the room is rarely the loudest. Our mission today is decoding, basically, the ultimate hacker of classical Chinese mythology.
We are diving into the epic Fengshen Yanyi, the investiture of the gods, to profile one of its most enigmatic characters.
Liu Ya, or as he's known, Liu Ya Daoist.
Right. And we're looking at a figure who fundamentally breaks the mold of what power even looks like in this classical text.
Oh, totally.
By synthesizing the ancient lore with, literary analysis, we can see exactly why Liu Ya isn't just a strong fighter, he's a ceiling-level entity who strikes a very specific cold fear into the hearts of gods.
Because he completely bypasses the established rules of engagement, right?
Exactly. He doesn't play the game everyone else is playing.
And to understand that fear, you really have to look at the sheer weirdness of how he fights. Because in a mythological epic like Fengshen Yanyi, standard fantasy battles usually involve what amounts to massive magical artillery strikes.
Yeah, you have combatants throwing literal mountains at each other.
Right. It's usually a contest of who has the deeper reserves of magical power. The orthodox magic of the established immortal sects relies heavily on these spectacular displays of clashing energies.
You see magical treasures colliding and direct, overwhelming force. A sword that shoots lightning meets a shield made of pure wind.
Yeah, it's very physics-based in a magical sense, if that makes sense.
It does. But then Liu Ya wanders onto the battlefield with a signature move that sounds like something straight out of a horror movie.
The ominously named Nailhead's Seven Arrows book.
Yes. And he decides to use this on a top-tier powerhouse named Zhao Gongming. Now, for those unfamiliar, Zhao Gongming is a massive heavy hitter.
Oh, yeah. He has impenetrable defenses and these overwhelming offensive artifacts.
Right, so a frontal assault on him is basically suicide.
Which is exactly why Liu Ya doesn't even attempt a frontal assault. He just sets up a camp far away from the front lines.
Because the Nailhead Seven Arrows book requires a specific combination of things. Talismans, an effigy of the target, and highly specific rituals.
Like a voodoo doll kind of setup.
Very similar, yeah. Over the course of 21 days, Liu Ya performs this relentless ceremonial bowing and shooting of tiny arrows into this straw effigy.
And with every single bow, he's just slowly draining the life force right out of his opponent.
Exactly. While Zhao Gongming is out there fully armored, wielding cosmic weapons, he just starts getting inexplicably weaker and weaker.
He's coughing up blood, entirely unable to figure out who is even hitting him.
Right, it's terrifying.
Okay, think about it like this. In this universe where everyone else is playing a competitive fighting game, mashing buttons to furiously trade blows, Liu Ya just types in a cheat code.
A cheat code that slowly deletes his opponent's health bar while he's, drinking tea in another time zone.
Exactly. And what makes that health bar deletion so terrifying is that it functions as a pure causality strike.
Yes, causality is the key word here. In this universe, orthodox magic manipulates the elements. Causality magic manipulates the fundamental strings of destiny itself.
So the 21 days of bowing aren't just for show.
No, not at all. Liu Ya is literally rewriting the universe's ledger. He's making it so that Zhao Gongming's death becomes an inevitable historical fact rather than just the outcome of a combat exchange.
Wow. By attacking the underlying rules of life and death, all of Zhao Gongming's immense strength and combat experience become completely irrelevant.
Right. It elevates Liu Ya's combat from standard magic battles to rule-level attacks. He doesn't overpower you. He just bypasses your power entirely.
It's basically localized administrative deletion. If I'm on the receiving end of that, I am terrified.
Oh, absolutely.
But here's the catch with having a cheat code like that, right? It's really only useful if you don't get caught using it in the middle of a war zone.
Yeah, if you're a sniper, you don't stand in the middle of a battlefield wearing a bright neon uniform.
Exactly. You need an escape plan. And Liu Ya's survival skills are, honestly, arguably more impressive than his offensive capabilities.
That's a great point. Throughout the text, he appears instantly when needed and vanishes before anyone can even retaliate.
Because the epic is full of these incredibly complex, inescapable magical arrays, right? Like these labyrinths of pure energy that trap and crush almost everyone else.
Yes, but Liu Ya is never trapped. The moment he senses genuine danger, he just leaves.
Trying to trap Liu Ya in a magical array feels like trying to catch a laser beam in a spider web.
That's a perfect analogy. The web might be incredibly complex and deadly to a fly, but light just passes right through the gaps.
He simply refuses to engage if the odds are entirely in his favor.
And his untouchable nature really stems from a hyper-awareness of the power hierarchy in this universe. He knows exactly where he sits.
Right, let's look at the opponents he actually chooses. We mentioned Zhao Gongming, who is a top-tier immortal, wielding stable, orthodox magic.
You also have the fiercely powerful Sengxiao sisters and the famous 12 golden immortals.
And these figures represent the elite heavyweights of the mythological world, basically tier 3 on the cosmic power scale, the strongest conventional fighters on the board.
Exactly. And Liu Ya sits just above them, essentially tier 2. He's a quasi-saint.
Got it.
Because his causality magic operates on a completely different, bizarre frequency compared to their textbook magic, he gladly targets those tier 3 heavyweights like Zhao Gongming.
Because his unblockable curse bypasses their conventional defenses.
Yes, but noticeably, he actively avoids direct clashes with the Sengxiao sisters.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
He recognizes that their specific magical arrays pose a unique threat that might actually snag his laser beam, so to speak.
Okay, wait, hold on. I'm getting stuck here for a second.
Sure, what is it?
If this causality strike is a literal destiny-rewriting rule breaker, why doesn't he just point it at the ultimate final bosses? Like, why not delete the creators of the universe?
Well, you'd think a hacker would go straight for the mainframe, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that's where the cheat code metaphor breaks down a bit. A cheat code only works inside the game's programming.
Okay.
The ultimate final bosses you're talking about, the tier 1 sense, like Yuanqi Tanzin, Tunkan Jiaozu, and Taishang Laozhen, they aren't in the programming. They are the programmers.
Ah. So you can't hack the system if the target literally is the system.
Exactly. They operate on a level of raw, fundamental reality manipulation. Liu Ya's magic requires the target to be subject to the normal rules of karma and cause and effect.
And the saints are above those rules.
Right. They wrote the rules. So Liu Ya's supreme self-awareness is his greatest asset. He's a rule loophole exploiter, not a universe breaker.
That makes so much sense. He lacks the raw, heaven and earth altering power of a tier 1 saint.
Which makes him the most dangerous non-saint entity, precisely because he knows exactly who he can trick and who he absolutely must avoid. He never overplays his hand.
And that is incredibly rare for mythological figures. I mean, usually these epics are just giant cautionary tales about hubris, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
A warrior gets a magic sword, thinks he can kill the sun, and gets turned into a mountain as punishment.
Yeah. But Liu Ya has zero ego about retreating if it means surviving.
And his lack of ego translates directly into his political maneuverings, or rather his total lack of them.
Right. Because he relies on this hyper-targeted magic and his absolute mobility, he just cannot afford to be bogged down in factional warfare.
He rejects the traditional structures of this mythological universe entirely.
Which makes him the ultimate lone wolf. And to give you some context on how crazy that is, the entire plot of Fengshen Yanyi is essentially a massive cosmic proxy war between two heavily entrenched factions.
Right. On one side, you have the Chan sect, which is very established, elite, and strictly structured.
Now, on the other side, you have the Jie sect, which is more chaotic, inclusive, and sprawling.
And literally every god, immortal, and demon in the universe is basically drafted into this conflict.
Yet Liu Ya remains totally unaffiliated.
He belongs to neither the Chan nor the Jie. He pledges allegiance to no one, which frustrates the established powers to no end.
I bet. In a world defined by deep sectarian loyalties, a free agent with a causality weapon is a massive wild card.
Oh, a terrifying wild card. And he doesn't even have a team of his own. The text goes out of its way to explicitly state he has no master and absolutely no students.
Right, there's no backup. But actually, there's a persistent misconception among some readers of the lore that we need to clear up on that point.
Yes, the Jiangxia situation.
Exactly. So during the war, the Chan sect faces this massive deadlock against Zhao Gongming. Liu Ya steps in and hands the Chan sect commander Jiangxia the Nailhead Seven Arrows book.
Right. And he walks Jiang Jie through the 21-day ritual. Because of this, people assume there's a master-apprentice relationship forming.
But he just handed him the instruction manual to a very dangerous piece of IKEA furniture.
That's exactly what it was. He acted as a temporary consultant. He imparted the exact knowledge necessary to resolve a specific narrative crisis.
But he absolutely refused to take Jiang Jie on as an apprentice.
Never. Furthermore, he never took on any of the famous powerhouse disciples of that era either, like Neza or Yang Xie. He kept his secrets closely guarded and remained entirely solitary.
So he's basically an elite independent contractor dropping into a massive corporate-level war.
Basically, yeah.
He fixes an impossible bug in the system for Jiang Jie, invoices them, and then dips out immediately so he doesn't have to deal with taking on full-time employees or navigating corporate politics.
And looking at it from a pure storytelling and structural perspective, the original author of Fengshen Yanyi needed someone exactly like that.
Oh, for sure. The plot is so thick with interwoven rivalries and rules that the narrative frequently reaches an unsolvable deadlock.
Right, so by keeping Liu Ya unaffiliated and unburdened by disciples, he functions perfectly as an external hack.
The author can bring him in to break the stalemate, kill an unkillable enemy, and shovel him off stage without upsetting the delicate balance of the ongoing sect rivalry.
You need someone who isn't bound by the rules to fix the story when the rules break the plot.
Yeah, that's brilliant. But, and this is a big but, this leads to the biggest mystery of the entire deep dive.
Here we go.
If he has no master to teach him these bizarre causality hacks, no sect to fund him, and no students to carry on his legacy, where on earth did he actually come from?
Well, the original text deliberately leaves his background completely blank.
Which is a brilliant narrative choice, honestly. It heightens his mystique immensely. He just appears out of the ether, fully formed and terrifyingly competent.
But over the centuries, readers, scholars, and mythological detectives have pored over the clues left behind. And those clues point to a truly staggering origin story.
Okay, lay out the evidence. What is the working theory on who this guy actually is?
So the most compelling mainstream theory in literary circles is that Liu Ya's is actually the last surviving golden crow.
The golden crow. Wait, we are talking about the sunbird from ancient Chinese myth, right?
Like, exactly. And to understand the weight of that, you have to look at the older, primordial layers of the mythology long before the events of this book.
Okay, set the scene for us.
Originally, the myth states there wasn't just one sun in the sky. There were 10.
10 suns.
Right. These 10 suns were the 10 golden crows, divine birds of pure, scorching heat. They were supposed to cross the sky one at a time. But one day, they all appeared in the sky at once.
And 10 suns boiling the oceans and scorching the earth is a literal apocalypse. It threatens to destroy all life.
Exactly. Which is where the famous archer Hou Yi comes into the picture.
Right. Hou Yi, the legendary archer. He strung his bow and systematically shot down 9 of those suns to save the world from turning to ash.
And he left only one survivor to provide light and warmth for humanity. The theory suggests that this single traumatized surviving sun, the last golden crow, is Liu Ya in human disguise.
Oh, wow. That is an incredibly heavy origin story. It completely reframes his entire personality. But what actually connects this solitary, elusive hacker to a cosmic sunbird?
The evidence is remarkably layered when you break it down, starting with linguistic and symbolic ties.
Okay, like what?
The name Liu Ya itself carries connotations in classical interpretations of a falling sun or the child of the sun. It's an implicit naming convention hinting at a celestial nature that has been brought low.
Like a remnant of something that fell from the sky. Okay, I buy the linguistic clue. What about his abilities?
Well, consider his defining physical trait in combat, the one that keeps him alive. His speed.
Right, we discussed how elusive he is.
How trying to trap him is like catching a laser beam in a spider web. The text explicitly describes his movement as being akin to rays of light.
Wow.
He moves with the literal speed and intangibility of sunlight. It's why no physical or magical net can ever hold him.
So the metaphorical laser beam we were talking about earlier is actually just a literal sunbeam.
Exactly. Furthermore, look at his demeanor. When he speaks to the other immortals, he openly calls himself a wild man.
Right, he acts like a relic from a much older, ancient mythological era.
He predates the current immortal sects, like the Chan and Jie. He doesn't play by their modern physics-based magical rules because he was around long before those rules were ever written.
He operates on primordial logic. So the reason his magic feels so bizarre and foreign compared to the 12 golden immortals isn't because he's doing rogue parlor tricks. It's because he is wielding ancient primordial force while everyone else is using modern textbook magic.
Exactly. He is playing an entirely different game because he is from an entirely different era.
That is wild.
And that brings us to the most crucial piece of evidence, the very nature of his causality magic itself. The Nailhead Seven Arrows book.
Okay, how does that connect to the sun?
Well, while it functions practically as a curse, the text describes the energy it relies on as having an intense, overwhelming yang energy.
Yang, meaning the masculine, active, and intensely hot energy universally associated with the sun.
Exactly. The magic feels less like a simple spell and more like a localized heavenly punishment. When Zhao Gongming is dying, it isn't just his life force draining. It is the raw, unadulterated power of the sun being channeled into a singular destructive focus.
Oh my God.
It brings absolute ruin to a single point, much like the Ten Suns once brought ruin to the entire ancient earth before Hou Yi intervened.
This takes everything we thought we knew about his combat style and just flips it entirely. He isn't just some rogue wizard casting spooky spells from afar.
No, he's the last surviving piece of an apocalyptic celestial event, wandering the universe in disguise, quietly wielding the heat of a star.
That perfectly explains his isolation and his acute awareness of his own limits. I mean, think about his psychology if this theory holds true.
Right. He knows the absolute terror of being hunted by a superior force.
He watched his 9 siblings get shot out of the sky by a mortal with a terrifying weapon. That deep, primordial trauma, that ultimate survival instinct, it translates directly into his hit-and-run tactics today.
Exactly.
That explains why he refuses to engage with the Tier 1 saints. He learned the hard way that no matter how hot you burn, no matter how powerful you think you are as a literal sun, there is always someone out there with a bigger bow.
His entire existence is defined by never repeating the mistake of his siblings. They flared up and announced their presence to the universe, and it got them killed.
So he stays in the shadows, uses remote strikes, and vanishes at the first sign of a real threat.
Exactly.
Wow. So bringing this all together for you listening, Liu Ya represents an incredibly fascinating archetype that we rarely see executed this well in fantasy or mythology.
He really is the hyper-competent outsider.
Yeah, he doesn't succeed through brute force, by yelling the loudest, or by having the backing of a massive corporate-style sect.
He succeeds through esoteric knowledge, perfect situational awareness, and an air of absolute mystery.
He understands exactly where the pressure points of his universe are, and he presses them with surgical precision, remaining entirely detached from the emotional drama of the war around him.
Right. He reminds us that understanding the rules of the game is powerful, but knowing the loopholes and the cheat codes is lethal.
And knowing when you are outmatched, knowing when to run away, is the true key to immortality.
It really is.
Which leaves us with one final lingering thought for you to mull over today based on these ancient texts. If the Golden Crow theory is entirely true, and Liu Ya is actually the ancient sun god walking around in disguise, think about his terrifying signature move again, the Nailhead Seven Arrows book.
Right, the 21-day curse.
We've called it a curse, a causality strike that slowly drains life from the safety of a dark room. But what if it isn't dark magic at all?
Oh, interesting.
What if what Zhao Gongbing experienced wasn't a curse, but simply the raw, scorching power of a contained sun being slowly and deliberately unleashed onto a single, isolated target?
That is a terrifying thought.
Think about that the next time you step outside and look up at the sun. It's not just giving light and warming the earth. It is a primordial force that plays entirely by its own rules. And it could burn you away without ever leaving the sky.
It really is the ultimate hacker in the sky.
It really is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.